The buzz of my phone sliced through the silence of my New York City apartment. The illuminated screen showed a family group FaceTime. I sighed. I'd promised to make it to the Christmas Eve dinner at the family home in Charleston before dessert, but a last-minute feature for Savannah Style magazine had kept me chained to my desk. Now, at 10 p.m., I was in flannel pajamas, my hair in a messy topknot drowning in guilt. I accepted the call. The image stabilized, revealing my parents' dining room. The sight was a gut punch of warmth and normalcy that suddenly made me feel a strange pang of nostalgia. Everything looked just right. Finally, Sophie, my younger sister's voice came through loud and clear, accompanied by an exaggerated pout. "We thought you'd run off with some slick Wall Street guy." "You know how much I love those Wall Street types," I replied, rolling my eyes but with a smile. "I'm so sorry, really. It's been chaos at the office." "Don't you worry, honey." The soft, soothing voice of my mother, Catherine. Her face appeared on screen smiling, but I noticed shadows under her eyes that her makeup couldn't quite conceal. "What's important is that you're okay. Have you eaten anything?" "A sandwich. I'll make up for it with a mountain of pecan pie tomorrow." Then the image shifted and he appeared. Declan, my fiancé. His smile was wide perfect, the one that used to make my stomach do a pleasant little flip. Tonight I only noticed how forced it seemed around the eyes. "Hey, beautiful," his voice was a familiar silk thread. "The table's not the same without you. We saved your seat." He moved the camera to show my empty chair next to his set, with the same antique white linen placemats. A thoughtful detail, a detail that once would have melted me. "Thanks, Declan. I really am sorry." "Oh, nonsense. Your work is important." He lowered his voice a little in a tone that was meant to be confidential. "Though your father has been checking his watch every 5 minutes. I think he had a special toast planned." My father, Arthur, leaned into the frame, his expression serious. He always wore his seriousness like other men wore a tie. "No special toasts, Declan. Just wanted to make sure our eldest hadn't gotten lost in that concrete jungle." His tone was dry, but there was a flicker of affection in his gray eyes. "Are you all right, Cassie?" "Yes, Dad. Just work." "Work is the only reliable thing in this life," he declared, as he often did. Then his gaze drifted to someone off-screen. "Ian, say something to this girl, see if you can get her to take better care of herself." The kind face of Dr. Ian Chavez, an old family friend, practically an uncle, appeared on screen. "Cassie, at this rate you'll waste away to nothing. Your mother made a turkey broth that could raise the dead. We're saving you a bowl." "Thanks, Uncle Ian. I promise I'll have it tomorrow." The conversation flowed for a few more minutes. Sophie joked about presents. My mother asked about mundane details of my apartment. My father and Ian briefly debated some political news. Declan remained in the foreground, smiling, nodding. It was all so normal, it was almost oppressive. It was the picture-perfect image of an American family Christmas Eve, but something was off. A subtle tension like a guitar string pulled too tight. About to snap. Declan raised his left hand, the light glinting off the platinum band of his watch. Then, almost casually, he rested that same hand on the back of my empty chair, his ring finger, where he wore the engagement ring he'd given me 6 months ago, a classic and very expensive solitaire diamond. He tapped the wood gently. "I miss you here," he murmured, looking directly at the camera. "At me? This chair is so cold without you." He pulled his other hand from his pocket. Draped between his fingers was the small diamond bracelet he'd given me for my last birthday. "I found this on the living room floor. You must have dropped it the last time you were here. It almost got lost." A chill ran down my spine. I didn't remember taking that bracelet off at his house. In fact, I was almost certain I had put it away in my jewelry box in New York. "Oh," was all I could manage. "Thanks for keeping it for me. I always take care of what's mine," he said, and his smile widened. His words, which once sounded like devotion, now resonated with a possessive echo that grated on my nerves. Sophie, with her unerring radar for awkwardness, rolled her eyes. "Please, Declan, stop talking like the lead in a cheesy rom-com. You're making everyone uncomfortable and it's giving me heartburn." "Sophie, mind your manners," my mother scolded, but her voice lacked its usual force. It was then that my mother's gaze, which had been wandering across the screen, fixed on something behind the camera in her own dining room. Her warm brown eyes flew wide open. It wasn't a slow movement. It was instant, violent. Her pupils contracted to tiny points, and all the color drained from her face, leaving it the waxy shade of a candle. Her mouth, which had been about to say something, hung open, frozen in a mask of pure terror. The screen was filled with her terrified eyes looking at me but seeing something else, something terrible just out of my field of view. "Cassie," she whispered. Her voice was nothing more than the rustle of dry leaves, a sound that barely made it through the microphone. But I heard it. I heard it with a clarity that cut through every other sound around me. "Honey?" She swallowed hard. Her fingers, pale and bony, appeared in the foreground, gripping the edge of the table. "Don't make a sound," she said, articulating each syllable with a forced, terrifying precision. "Don't speak, you hear me?" I nodded, paralyzed, unable to look away from her transformed face. Tonight she continued, lowering her voice even further to the very edge of a whisper. "Your father will come get you from your apartment. Be ready. Trust me. Don't ask questions now." Her eyes darted for a fraction of a second, looking over my virtual shoulder toward whatever had terrified her. When they returned to me, tears were shining in them. "I love you, sweetheart." The screen went black. The call had been disconnected. I sat on my bed, the warm phone in my hand, the hum of silence filling my ears. The beat of my heart was a wild drum in my chest. What the hell had just happened? What had my mother seen? Why that fear? Why did my dad have to come get me? Why couldn't I ask questions? The normalcy of just a minute ago had been shattered, leaving behind a landscape of confusion and a sharp, cold fear that began to creep up my spine. "Don't make a sound," her words echoed in my head. I got off the bed, my bare feet finding the cold hardwood floor of my own apartment. The place I considered my refuge in New York suddenly felt hostile and full of shadows. The clock read 10:20 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Come get me. Why? Why couldn't I just take a cab to the airport and fly down myself? What was happening in that dining room that warranted that terror in my mother's eyes? The doubt became an urgent physical need. I had to know, had to understand. I opened my bedroom door carefully without making the slightest noise. The hallway of my apartment was dark, silent. On the other side of the country, the dining room door in my parents' house would be closed, but maybe if I called... No, that was crazy. I was in New York. They were in Charleston, a 2-hour flight away. But the image of my mother, pale as death, pushed me. No, I couldn't call her cell. She had told me not to. Don't make a sound. So what? A desperate, absurd idea crossed my mind. The video call app, sometimes if it's not closed properly on the other end, no, it was impossible. She had cut the call. I stood motionless in the hallway, my heart hammering in my temples. Declan's phrase echoed again. "I always take care of what's mine." And the bracelet I didn't remember losing. Without thinking further, acting on an instinct I didn't understand, I went to my closet, not for clothes. I opened the small safe set into the wall, hidden behind a row of coats. My jewelry box. I opened it. There were my grandmother's pearl earrings, the gold necklace I got for graduation, a few modern pieces, and Declan's diamond bracelet. It wasn't lost. It was here where I had left it. He had lied. Why lie about something so trivial? The chill in my back intensified. I had to hear. I had to know what was happening in that house. I decided to do the only thing I could think of, call the landline in the kitchen. From there, if someone left the receiver off the hook, maybe I could hear something from the dining room. It was a ridiculous movie plot plan, but I couldn't think of anything better. I dialed the number with trembling fingers. The ringtone sounded once, twice. "Hello," my father's voice, tense, dry. "Dad, it's me," I said, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Sorry to call the landline, my cell battery died." "Is everything okay, Mom?" cut the call all of a sudden. There was a pause that was too long. I could hear a background murmur of hushed, urgent voices. Yes, everything's fine," my father said too quickly. "A problem with the doorbell. Your mother got startled. Nothing important." His voice sounded strange, hoarse, as if his throat were tight. "The doorbell?" I asked, unable to hide my skepticism. "Cassie," he cut me off, and his tone was now that of a lawyer giving an order, not a father. "Stay in your apartment. Don't go out. I'll come later. I have to sort something out here. Don't call anyone." Understood. It was almost the same thing my mother had told me, but without the terror, with a coldness that chilled my blood. "Dad, what's going on? You're scaring me." "Nothing is going on that I can't handle," he said, and then added more quietly, as if moving away from the receiver. "Catherine, calm down. For God's sake, Ian, can you—" The line went dead. He had hung up. Now the panic was a living animal writhing in my stomach. Something was very wrong. My father, the most controlled and stoic man I knew, sounded on the verge of, what anger, desperation. I couldn't just sit there. I had to go there. But they had told me not to leave, to stay put, that Dad would come. No, I couldn't wait. I grabbed my cell phone, plugged it in to charge, and with hands that barely obeyed me, I pulled on a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt. Then I went back to the jewelry box. My gaze fell on the pieces. My inheritance, the only thing of real value I owned aside from the apartment, which still had a large mortgage. My grandmother's jewels, my own, and Declan's engagement ring. I picked it up. The solitaire diamond was cold and heavy, a symbol of a future that suddenly seemed like a glittering, cruel trap. My mother's voice. Be ready. Ready for what? Not knowing exactly why. Acting on pure instinct, I emptied the jewelry box into a small cloth bag. Everything, earrings, necklaces, bracelets, the ring. I tied it with a knot and stuffed it into the inner pocket of my winter coat. Then I stood still in the middle of the room, listening to my own silence, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the beat of my own heart. No going there was stupid. If there was danger, I'd walk right into it. If there wasn't, I'd look like a hysteric. But I had to know, I had to hear. I left my room, walked down the hall, and opened the door to my apartment with extreme care. The landing was empty. I went down the stairs. I lived on the second floor of a walk-up, like a ghost, avoiding the steps that creaked. I stepped out onto the street. Christmas Eve in New York was surprisingly quiet, cold. The icy air hit my face, clearing my thoughts a little. There were no cars, no people. Everyone was at home celebrating. My family home was hundreds of miles away. But I had to go. I hailed the only cab I saw, a lone yellow light in the deserted street. JFK, I said, my voice hoarse. And step on it. The flight was a blur of anxiety. I landed in Charleston in the dead of night. I took another cab, giving an address a few blocks from my parents' house. The night was humid and heavy with the scent of jasmine and salt marsh. I walked the last few blocks, staying in the shadows, just another silhouette in the festive night. Each step was a battle against fear and reason. What did I expect to find? What did I expect to hear? I reached the familiar wrought iron gate. The house, a stately two-story home in the quiet, historic district, was lit up. From the street, I could see the lights in the dining room were on, the curtains not quite drawn. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid they could hear it from inside. I went around the house through the side garden, avoiding the motion sensor on the main light. I knew every inch of this place, every stone that crunched underfoot. I approached the dining room window that faced the back garden. It was slightly ajar, maybe to air out the smoke from my father and Ian's cigars. And from there, crouched among the azalea bushes, freezing in the damp air, I could hear them. The voices weren't laughter or festive conversation. They were tense, hushed voices charged with a fury and fear that passed through the glass. It was my father's voice, but I had never heard it like this. It was filled with a trembling, impotent rage. I can't go on like this, Ian. Not anymore. This has gotten out of hand. And with what happened tonight? Did you see them? They're out there like vultures. The calm but grave voice of Dr. Chavez answered, Arthur, you have to stay calm. Catherine saw them, yes, but they won't dare to come in. Not here. Not on Christmas Eve? Christmas Eve, my father spat, and the sound of a fist hitting the mahogany table made me jump. You think they give a damn about Christmas? The only thing they care about is money. My money or what's left of it. Dad, please. Sophie's voice choked with sobs. Just tell them no. Tell them to leave us alone. Call the police. No, Sophie, my mother's voice ragged. You can't say that. You don't know. You don't know what they're capable of. What he's capable of. He who, a fourth voice entered the conversation. A voice I knew so well that had whispered promises in my ear, but now it sounded cold, slick, like polished steel. It was Declan. Sophie has an admirable passion, but little common sense. His tone was almost paternal, condescending. It made my skin crawl. Call the police, sweetheart. That would be the biggest mistake your family could make. After all the papers are signed, the failed investments, the defaulted loans, the police at best would take your father away for financial mismanagement. And at worst, he paused a calculated lethal beat. Well, the results of those medical tests, the good doctor. Chavez has been running don't exactly paint a picture of legality, do they? Doctor, that's an outrage, Ian grumbled, but his voice lacked force. He sounded defeated. You forced me. You blackmailed me with the clinic. Blackmail is such an ugly word, Ian Declan said smoothly. It was a collaboration. like Arthur's with the Port Authority contracts. You all collaborated, you all signed, you all benefited. I haven't benefited from anything, my father shouted, his voice breaking. I just wanted to save my practice, save my family from the ruin you orchestrated. Orchestrated, Declan repeated, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Such a dramatic word. Your practice was in trouble, Arthur. My family offered you a solution. A capital injection, some influential clients. You accepted with your eyes wide open. What you didn't calculate were the risks. Oh yes, but you looked the other way. Until you started sniffing around where you shouldn't, until you asked Ian here to analyze those samples from the surgical equipment shipments. My blood ran cold. Surgical equipment shipments tests. It was drugs, Ian said in a whisper full of disgust. High-grade opioids disguised in the instruments. And you wanted me to sign certificates of health compliance to cover up the analyses. And you did, Declan reminded him relentlessly. Several times. Your signature is on the papers. Just like yours, Arthur, is on the import contracts that diverted the merchandise to other ports, to other partners. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by Sophie's sobs. The only thing missing, Declan continued, his voice lowering even more, becoming intimate, dangerous for this whole unpleasant misunderstanding to be resolved, is the wedding. Cassie and I together. A family. That way all these little irregularities become family matters. They're managed internally. The debt from your practice, Arthur, disappears. The problems at Ian's clinic are solved. And that valuable collection of jewelry Cassie inherited from her grandmother, well, that would be a magnificent contribution to the family assets, a symbol of our union. My hand tightened on the cloth bag in my pocket. The jewelry. He wanted it, not as a symbol but as loot, as collateral. You will not touch my daughter, my mother's voice trembling but firm. You will not take her jewelry. Catherine, Declan said with false pity. Cassie loves me. We're engaged. The wedding is in the spring. She'll be happy. She doesn't need to know the boring details of business. And as for the jewelry, it's hers. It will be ours. It's only natural. You're a monster, Sophie spat. You've been lying to my sister all this time. It was all a sham. You met her at that event on purpose, didn't you? You courted her, proposed to her all for this. To have us all by the throat. I love her in my own way, Sophie Declan said, and the coldness of his words pierced me like an ice pick. She's charming, innocent, the perfect jewel for the crown. But a crown needs a solid kingdom, and my family is building that kingdom. With or without your help. Preferably with it. Because if not, he left the sentence hanging. If not, what my father challenged, but his voice was broken. Your practice goes bankrupt in a very loud and shameful way. Ian loses his medical license or worse. And Cassie? He paused. Well, she would discover that the man she loves isn't who she thought he was, and that her family has kept her in the dark while making grave mistakes. It would be devastating for her. As fragile as she is, fragile, the word burned me. My entire life, my love, my future, was a calculated lie, a trap. And my family, my father, Dr. Chavez were in up to their necks in something dirty, something illegal, and Declan had them buy it. Tears blinded me, but the coldness inside me was stronger, a cold that froze everything, the pain, the betrayal, the fear, and turned it into something clear and hard. Tonight, my father said, his voice just an echo of itself. Tonight I'll go get her. I'll tell her. I'll tell her part of the truth. No, Declan's voice was swift, sharp. You won't. You'll stay here with your family to make sure you all reflect on your options. I'll go get Cassie. As the concerned fiancé, I'll tell her there was a small family incident, a silly argument, and that it's best if she spends the night with me at my apartment, away from the stress. No, my mother said in a thread of a voice. Don't touch her. I'll only comfort her, Catherine Declan said, and the obscene tone in his voice made me nauseous. And while I'm at it, I'll pick up that jewelry she loves so much to keep it safe. Of course, with everything that's happening, it's not safe to have so much value in one apartment. That was the last straw. I rose from the bushes, trembling, but not from cold, from a pure, silent rage. My family was in there trapped. My father broken. My mother terrified. My sister crying. And Ian, a good man, destroyed. And he, Declan, my fiancé, the architect of all this, would not be going to my apartment. He would not find me there. My mother's last command echoed in my head. Be ready. I was. I moved away from the window, from the house, from the life I had known. With every step I took into the darkness of the empty streets, I felt the world I had believed to be real cracking apart. The cold Christmas night air no longer chilled me. It was the heat of betrayal and fear that burned within. I had the jewelry. I had the knowledge. And above all, I had a fierce need to survive. I didn't know where to go. I only knew I couldn't stay, that I couldn't go back to my apartment, that Declan would go there, or send someone. I stopped at a corner, panting the vapor of my breath, forming clouds in the frigid air. I took out my phone. The battery was low. I couldn't call home. I couldn't call mutual friends. Declan would know them. Then I remembered. Leah, my childhood friend. Leah, who had gone to law school but ended up in the police force. Leah, who always said she distrusted men who were too perfect. Leah, who lived in a small apartment in a part of town no one in my current family circle knew. I dialed her number with numb fingers. It rang once, twice. Cassie, what are you doing calling at this hour on Christmas Eve? Aren't you with your family? Her voice was groggy, as if I'd woken her. Leah, I said, and my voice sounded strange, broken as if it weren't my own. I need help. I need a place to hide. Now. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then her voice changed, became clear, professional alert. Where are you? I gave her the address of the street corner. Stay right there. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up. I leaned against the cold brick wall, hidden in the shadow of a doorway. In my pocket, my hand gripped the cloth bag of jewelry tightly. The diamond of the engagement ring seemed to dig into my palm. From a distance in the direction of my family's home, I thought I saw the dining room lights go out, leaving only the dim glow of the entryway. Christmas Eve was over, and with it everything I had believed my life to be. The intercom buzzed like a gunshot in the charged silence of Leah's small apartment in a quiet part of town. I flinched, moving even further from the window as if Declan's eyes could pierce the walls. Leah, with a calm that only years of seeing the worst of Charleston on patrol can give, walked to the panel and pressed the button without a word. A few seconds later, firm, quick knocks on the door. It's me. Open up, said a tense but familiar male voice. It was Mike. Leah unfastened the deadbolts, there were 3 I noted, and opened the door. Mike Chen, my colleague from the magazine, blew in like a gust of cold December air. He wore a worn leather jacket, his glasses fogged, and a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. His sharp, always analytical gaze behind the lenses scanned me immediately. My God, Cassie, you look like you've seen a ghost, he said without preamble. He dropped his bag on the floor and ran a hand through his hair, messing it up even more. Leah gave me the rundown over the phone, but I need to hear everything. From the beginning. I sat on the couch, hugging myself. Leah poured me a brandy. The glass trembled in my hand. I started to talk. The words came out in fits and starts at first, then in a torrent. The FaceTime call. The terror in my mother's eyes. The escape. The fragments of conversation overheard by the window. Declan's words, the accusations, the drugs, the jewelry. Mike listened motionless without interrupting, taking mental notes. I knew his process. When I finished, he took off his glasses and meticulously cleaned them with the hem of his shirt. Cassie, he murmured finally. This is much more than a scumbag boyfriend. This is organized crime. That's what I'm thinking. Leah nodded, leaning against the counter of the small kitchen. Her expression was hard professional. The Hales own an international logistics company, Wright Hale Rapid Cargo. There have always been rumors. Rumors they move more than just appliances. But there's never been any proof. And they have friends, lots of friends in high places. We need proof, Mike said, putting his glasses back on. His gaze was now that of the investigative journalist who had uncovered a couple of minor political scandals. What you heard is crucial, but it's your word against theirs. And your family. He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. My father and Dr. Chavez were compromised. My dad said he'd been gathering evidence, I said, remembering they'd found him out. That's good. It means there's something tangible. But if Declan and his people are nervous enough to watch the house and make threats on Christmas Eve, it means your father got too close to something big. Mike opened his laptop. I'm going to do some digging. Stuff that doesn't show up in normal Google searches. While he typed, Leah sat beside me. You have the jewelry, I nodded, pulling the cloth bag from my inner pocket. The contents tinkled faintly. I opened it and emptied the pieces onto the coffee table. The solitaire diamond of the engagement ring sparkled under the lamplight as if mocking me. He specifically mentioned them, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He said it wasn't safe to have them in my apartment, that he would put them somewhere safe. A thief who gives a warning, Mike grumbled without looking up from the screen. He doesn't want the jewelry for its value, Cassie. Or not only for that. Your family is old. One of those names with history, but not much liquid cash for generations. No, yeah. My dad's practice does well enough, but not for this. I pointed at the jewelry. This is my maternal grandmother's inheritance. The only thing of real value. And what do you know about its origin? Leah asked, picking up the ruby necklace, the most striking piece. Just family stories. That they belonged to my great-grandmother, that they were brought over from, I don't know, before the war. My grandmother guarded them like her life depended on it. She never wore them. Mike stopped typing. His face had turned pale. Before the war, he repeated. Then he shook his head as if to clear it. First things first. I've been snooping on some forums' dark websites where they discuss things that don't get published. He took a deep breath. There's an ongoing, very discreet investigation by the FBI's Economic Crimes Unit into money laundering through logistics companies operating out of the Port of Charleston and a free trade zone in Miami. The name Hale appears as a person of interest, but there's no movement. Nothing. As if someone put a lid on it. That fits, I said, feeling a new cold pit in my stomach. And then there's this, Mike continued, turning the screen towards us. It was a record from the State Medical Board, a list of inspections. Dr. Ian Chavez's clinic has been inspected 3 times in the last 18 months for excessive prescription of benzodiazepines and other psychotropic drugs, but the reports are always filed without sanctions. Missing documentation. System errors are alleged. Ian would never. I started but fell silent. The Ian I knew, the uncle who treated my childhood sore throats, no. But the terrified man I'd heard in the dining room, that man could have been pressured, blackmailed. And there's more, Mike said, his voice grave. The companies to which these massive prescriptions were billed are empty shell corporations. And one of them appears as a sub-any contractor for Hale Rapid Cargo for cleaning and disinfection services for special containers. Silence settled over the room. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a monstrous picture. Drugs disguised as medical supplies, falsely prescribed to justify their existence, moved through a logistics company with connections and the money laundered, perhaps through fake investments like the one that had swallowed my father's. Practice. My phone, the new one Leah had given me, a simple burner, vibrated on the table. An unknown number. Leah gestured for me not to pick it up. But then, Leah's personal phone rang. She looked at it and frowned. "It's your dad," she said. "He called my dad to get this number. I'm patching you through." I took her phone with a trembling hand. "Dad, Cassie." His voice was a hoarse whisper filled with an infinite weariness. "Are you safe? Are you with Leah?" "Yes, Dad. I'm safe. And you, Mom, Sophie, we're okay. For now." A background noise like a door closing. "Listen to me, sweetheart, and listen carefully. I don't have much time. What you heard is true. And it's much worse than you can imagine." "Dad, what did you do?" I asked, my voice a contained sob. "I was an idiot. A proud, stupid idiot." His voice broke. 2 years ago, the practice was on the brink of bankruptcy. Some bad investments, a few cases that went wrong. Declan approached me through a mutual friend. Offered a capital injection, a lifeline. I grabbed it. I signed contracts. I didn't read carefully enough. He introduced me to important clients. At first, everything went well, too well. Then, small legal tweaks in import documents, ambiguous clauses, jurisdictional detours. I looked the other way, thinking they were aggressive but legal practices. Until Ian came to me, scared to death. "The drugs," I whispered. "Yes," my father said, and the word sounded like a sigh of agony. He discovered that some of the sterile medical equipment Declan's company was importing and distributing to private clinics wasn't so sterile. It came with extras. He refused to sign the certificates. And then they showed him pictures of his little girl leaving school, of his wife going into the grocery store. I felt the world tilt. Oh my God. They showed me similar pictures of you, Cassie. Of Sophie. Of your mother. And they reminded me of the contracts I'd signed. I was legally responsible. They could ruin me, send me to prison for fraud and racketeering. And in the meantime, he couldn't continue. "Why didn't you go to the police then? Because they are the police." He burst out in a furious whisper. "They're a network. They have better lawyers than I do. They have people in places." Declan made it clear. If I went to the police, the incriminating evidence against me would surface instantly, and the photos of your daily routines would arrive in my mailbox with a message. The next step won't be a photo. And I believed God. How could I have believed it that if you agreed to marry him, if our families joined, everything would calm down, that it would be a way to protect you, to keep you out of this, to draw the venom? You used me as a bargaining chip, I said, the bitterness filling my mouth. I love you, sweetheart, he cried, then abruptly lowered his voice as if afraid of his own volume. I thought he loved you too, in his own way. That he was arrogant and ambitious, but that he cared for you and that the marriage would give you status security. I would be the useful father-in-law and you would be happy without knowing anything. The naivety of his plan, his desperation left me breathless. And the jewelry, Dad. Why does he want the jewelry? There was a long pause. That's something else. Your grandmother, my mother-in-law, always said that jewelry was special. More than it seemed. Your mother thought it was just the ramblings of an old woman. But a few months ago, Declan started asking questions. A lot of questions about your mother's family history, about the exact origin of the pieces. He became obsessed. Said a collector friend was interested that he wanted to have them appraised. We thought it was odd, but after all, he was going to be your husband. We thought he wanted to insure them, protect your inheritance. You lied by omission all this time, I said, unable to hide the reproach. Yes, he admitted without excuses. And we dragged you into this hell. That's why your mother made you run. That's why she told you to take the jewelry. Because if Declan wants it so badly, it's worth more than money. And it's the only thing we have that could be a lifeline. Or a bomb. What should I do, Dad? Listen to Leah. Trust Mike, if he's with you, I'm guessing from the silence on your end. I'm going to try something. I have copies of some documents of the doctored contracts, the strange bank transfers. Ian has his own notes. We can't go on like this. That call tonight was the last straw. Seeing the fear in your mother's eyes and Sophie's, his voice hardened. I'm going to try to contact someone. The FBI, the DA's office. But I need time and I need you to be far away and safe. Don't go to your apartment. Don't contact anyone in our circle. Declan will be looking for you. And are you safe there for now? Yes. They think he has me under control through fear. But that will change when they realize you're not in your apartment and not answering your phone. Cassie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the weight of his words crushing me. It wasn't just a cheating fiancé. It was a criminal network and my family was trapped in the middle. The burner phone vibrated again on the table. This time a text message from an unidentified number. Cassie, darling, I know you must be frightened. There was a misunderstanding tonight. Your family is fine but on edge. Tell me where you are. I'll come get you. Everything will be sorted out. D. Then a second message a few minutes later. I see you're not at your apartment. That's not smart. The city isn't safe for a woman alone at night, especially with valuable things on her. Give me back what's mine and let's forget this family disagreement. I wouldn't want your family to suffer any more accidents. The stairs at your parents' house are very steep. Your mother seems very tired lately. The veiled yet crystal clear threat chilled my blood. I showed it to Leah and Mike. He's trying to trace you by triangulation or just scare you, Leah said, taking the phone. Don't answer. Turn it off. We'll ditch it. We'll get another. The tone has changed, Mike observed coldly. In the house, he was the controlling fiancé. Now he's a direct threat. He's getting nervous because he can't find you. And the thing about the jewelry. What's mine? I asked. He considers it his, Leah said. He thinks he has a right to it. Your dad mentioned. Declan asked obsessive questions about its origin. Mike returned to his computer typing with renewed fury. There's something here. Something I read a while back and didn't connect, he muttered to himself, navigating through folders full of scanned documents and digital clippings. Here. A few years ago, before you started dating Declan, there was a rumor in certain circles, very obscure circles of collectors and traffickers of art and antiquities. They talked about a World War II treasure. Not gold, not paintings. Documents. Property deeds, shares in foreign companies, things that certain families that fled or disappeared hid. Some were never recovered. I looked at the jewelry on the table. The rubies looked like drops of blood in the lamplight. You think... I don't know, Mike said, looking up. But if the Hales are into money laundering, a hidden treasure, especially one that can be legitimized with documents, would be the goose that laid the golden egg. They could clean their money once and for all. And if your family, without knowing it, holds the key to finding it. The intercom buzzed, making all three of us jump. This time, it was 2 short rings followed by a long one. Leah relaxed slightly. "It's Raoul, my partner." She went to open the door. Raoul was a burly man with a kind face but alert eyes. He brought a plastic bag with clothes and 2 new burner phones. "I've been circling your street, Cassie," he said, greeting me with a nod. "No one's watching Leah's building for now. But there's an unmarked black sedan parked 2 blocks down with 2 guys inside. They're not exactly eating donuts. They've been there since I arrived half an hour ago." "Can you describe them?" Leah asked, turning professional. "One's bald with a tattoo on his neck, peeking over his collar. The other's younger in a hoodie. Car's an old Audi, a 6 license plate partially smeared. Not their usual way of operating. They're too obvious. Either they want us to see them, or they're desperate. Desperate because Cassie slipped away," Mike concluded. "And because the jewelry isn't where it should be." "We have to move her," Leah said decisively. "This apartment is safe, but not long-term if they've already identified my connection to you." "Raoul, can you take her to that place?" Raoul nodded. "The safe apartment is ready. It's a place we sometimes use for witnesses. Well, for delicate situations. Nothing fancy but clean and anonymous." "I'm going with her," Mike said, closing his laptop. "I need a secure connection to keep digging. And if there's something in that jewelry, we need to find out what it is." I looked at my friends, these 2 people who had jumped to my aid without hesitation. Leah with her steel resolve, Mike with his relentless brain, Raoul with his calming presence. They weren't my family, but in that moment they were my only anchor. "Thank you," I said, my voice weak. "I don't know." "Don't, Leah," cut me off, coming over and taking my hands, which were ice cold. "You're my friend. This is what we do." Then she looked at the jewelry. "Put it away. Don't let it out of your sight. Ever." I gathered the pieces one by one and put them back in the cloth bag. The engagement ring was the last. I held it between my fingers, watching the light create cold flashes in its perfect cut. It no longer represented a future. It represented deceit, manipulation, threat. With a sharp movement, I tossed it into the bag with the others. "Let's go," Raoul said, peeking carefully out the window. "We'll go out through the garage. My car's down there. You, Mike, behind me, Cassie in the middle. And put this on." He tossed me a baseball cap and a loose dark jacket that wasn't mine. I put them on, hiding my hair under the cap. The exit was quick and silent. We went down the service stairs to the building's basement, a labyrinth of pipes and metal doors. Raoul's car, a discreet gray sedan, was parked next to a pile of boxes. We slipped inside. He drove without hurry, but with determination, taking a roundabout route through side streets, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirrors. No one followed us, or if they did, they were very good. The safe house turned out to be a small studio in a 1970s building in a nondescript part of town. Functional furniture. It smelled of cleaning supplies. The windows faced an inner courtyard. Anonymous. Safe. Raoul stayed for a moment, making sure everything was in order. "Stay here. Don't go out. I'll keep an eye on the area. Leah will be in touch. You have my number on the new phone for emergencies." When he left, silence fell over the small apartment. Mike connected his laptop, creating a secure Wi-Fi network through his phone. I collapsed onto the sofa bed exhausted. The clock read 3 a.m. Christmas Eve was over. It was Christmas Day and my world was in pieces. Why, I asked aloud to no one in particular. Why me? Why my family? Mike stopped typing. "It's not personal, Cassie." Or it wasn't at first. "Your father was a useful link, a respectable lawyer. You were the easiest way in to ensure his cooperation. You're smart, beautiful, from a good family. The perfect bait. Love is blind. And the jewelry." He shrugged. "That might have been an added bonus. Or it might be the real prize. We don't know yet." "And now, what?" I asked, feeling small and lost. "Now," Mike said, the screen illuminating his serious face, "we investigate. Your father is going to try to make his move. We have to prepare ours. We need to find Declan's weakness, something more than just rumors and conversations recorded in your memory. And what if I go to the police?" With what I know, with what my dad can tell them, Mike shook his head slowly. "It's risky. If the investigation into the Hales is stalled, as it seems there might be someone inside slowing it down. Your report could go nowhere. Or worse, alert them. We need something solid, something they can't ignore. The papers your father has Ian's evidence. His gaze fell on the cloth bag I was clutching to my chest. And whatever is behind this, the new phone rang. It was Leah. Cassie, listen. I just got word from work. Her voice was strange, tense. There's been an incident at your parents' house. I sat up straight. What? What happened? It's been reported as an attempted robbery. Someone forced the back garden door, but nothing was taken. Just a mess. A robbery where nothing is stolen. Exactly. It's a message, Cassie. We can get in whenever we want. Your dad just called too. He's a wreck. Says Declan was there an hour ago, worried about your family argument. He offered to go look for you himself. Your dad told him you were at a friend's house upset, didn't want to talk to anyone. Declan either bought it or pretended to. But he left with a smile that, according to your dad, chilled him to the bone. It was a chess game, and we were pawns trying to become queens. And Sophie. My mom's scared but safe. Your dad told them a watered-down version. But the message is clear. The pressure is mounting. There was a pause. There's something else. Mike was right. I've been asking around quietly. The investigation into Hale and Associates exists, but it's in a very high-up drawer. Someone with influence is blocking it. We need a very big lever to pry it open. I hung up and relayed the information to Mike. His expression darkened even more. This is getting ugly fast, he muttered. Then he locked his eyes on mine. Cassie, we have to find out the secret of that jewelry. If there is one, it could be the lever, or it could be the only thing keeping you alive. The night outside the apartment's blind windows was black and deep. Somewhere Declan would be looking for me, his net closing in, and I was hidden in an anonymous apartment with the cold weight of inherited stones in my hands. It was all that stood between my family and ruin, or worse. The game had begun, and I didn't even know the rules. The safe apartment smelled of dust and stale coffee. The gray light of Christmas morning filtered through the blinds, drawing pale lines across the table, where Mike's laptop hummed like a swarm of metallic bees. I hadn't been able to sleep. Every creak of the building, every gurgle of the pipes was Declan coming up the stairs. The threatening text floated behind my eyelids every time I closed them. You need to eat something, Leah said, placing a glass of water and a granola bar in front of me. Her tone brooked no argument. She wore her hair in a severe ponytail and was frowning at her own phone. Raoul's outside. The perimeter is clean. For now. For now isn't reassuring, I muttered. But I took the water. My hands were barely trembling anymore. The sharp fear had morphed into a dull, constant anxiety, a state of permanent alert. Mike grunted in front of the screen. This doesn't quite add up, he said more to himself than to us. The Hales company Rapid Cargo has ridiculously low declared profits for the volume of business it supposedly handles. It's like most of the money passes through without ever touching their official books. Classic money laundering, Leah nodded, approaching. They bring in dirty money through shell companies that bill them for inflated services, and then that clean money goes out as legitimate investment or payment to suppliers. But they need a constant flow of dirty money to justify the laundering. And the drugs Ian discovered would be one source, I said, connecting the dots. But Declan was obsessed with my jewelry, even before my dad had problems, before Ian discovered anything. Why? Mike swiveled in his chair. That's the million-dollar question. I've been diving into digitized historical archives, genealogy forums, even online estate sale groups. Your last name, Miller, is common, but your grandmother's maiden name was Vaughn, right? I nodded, surprised. Yes, Amelia Vaughn. Vaughn, Mike repeated, typing. An old Charleston family, textile interests not especially prominent, but here's a curious detail. In 1942 inches, the middle of World War II, a certain Frederick Vaughn, your great-grandmother's brother, appears on some international Red Cross lists as an intermediary in the repatriation of assets. He looked up. He was a lawyer and worked very discreetly, helping families, some of Jewish or foreign origin, to get assets out of Europe before it was too late. For a commission, of course. A shiver ran through me. Are you saying? I'm not saying anything yet, just drawing lines. There are rumors, always rumors, that some of those assets never reached their final destination, that they were lost along the way. Some talk of works of art, others of precious metals, and others of documents, bearer bonds, stock certificates, deeds to foreign accounts. Papers that today, after decades of interest and appreciation, would be worth an incalculable fortune but are impossible to claim without the original ownership documents. Leah let out a soft whistle. An intangible but real paper treasure. Exactly, Mike said. And if someone like Declan's family, who operates in the underbelly of money and logistics, found out that one of the families Frederick Vaughn helped was their own, and that maybe he kept some key document as don't know collateral or simple precaution, then my grandmother's. Jewelry might not be just jewelry. I finished, my voice hoarse. They could be a key, a map, something. The cloth bag in my lap seemed to weigh a ton. We need to know more, Leah said decisively. Is anyone left from that generation, anyone who might know something, I thought. My grandmother Amelia had died years ago, her husband, my grandfather too. But her younger sister, I said suddenly. Aunt Pearl. She lives in a small town in Georgia, in a nursing home. She's almost 90. My mother visits her once a month. She says sometimes she's very lucid, and other times, not so much. Mike was already searching for Pearl Vaughn. She married young. She's a doctor's widow. Her last name is Romero now. Pearl Romero. He found the number for the nursing home Vista Hills in less than a minute. He looked at the clock. 8 a.m. on Christmas Day. Not the best time. Do it, I said. Please. Tell them. Tell them I'm Cassie Miller, Amelia's granddaughter. That it's urgent. While Mike called and spoke with a sympathetic but cautious nurse, my secure phone vibrated. It was my father. His voice sounded shattered. Cassie, they came. He took a deep, harsh breath. The police. For the attempted robbery. They were pretending to ask routine questions, but one of them, when the others weren't looking, slipped me a card. It's from the FBI's Economic Crimes Unit. Agent Miller. He said he received an anonymous tip about irregular activities at my firm related to Rapid Cargo. He wants to talk to me. In private, away from here. Is he legit? I asked, my heart in my throat. I don't know. It could be a trap from Declan. It could be real. The card seems authentic. I checked the number. But if it's real and I talk, we expose ourselves to immediate retaliation. Declan would know in hours. Dad, what are you going to do? Ian and I talked. We can't go on like this. We have to try. But we need something more, something that gives us leverage. Some proof that's so big, so undeniable that not even his friends in the force or the DA's office can cover it up. Something that leads directly to him, not just to us as accomplices. His voice lowered. Have you found out anything about the other thing? We're working on it, I said, looking at Mike, who was hanging up the phone with a thoughtful expression. Aunt Pearl. We're going to try to talk to her. Godspeed, sweetheart. Be careful. And Cassie. I'm sorry for all this pain. The call ended. I stared at the phone, feeling the overwhelming weight of his decision. He was going to risk everything. Mike came over. The nurse went to get your aunt. Says she's awake and quite lucid this morning. She'll call us back on this number in 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes were an eternity. Leah made real coffee, strong and black. The aroma filled the sterile room. When the phone rang, all three of us jumped. An elderly voice, frail but clear, came from the earpiece. Cassie, Amelia's girl. Yes, Aunt Pearl, it's me. Thank you so much for taking my call. It's very important. You sound like her, you know, she said with a hint of nostalgia. In the high notes. Amelia was always singing. She paused. The nurse says it's urgent and it's Christmas. Nothing good happens on Christmas Day if it's urgent. Child speak. I took a deep breath. Auntie, I need to ask you about Grandma's jewelry. The ruby set. Did she ever tell you anything special about it? Any stories? The silence on the other end was so long I thought the line had disconnected. Pearl. Why are you asking about that? She said finally, and her voice had lost all its softness. It sounded alert, even suspicious. Who put that idea in your head? It's because of my fiancé, Declan. I improvised, not wanting to scare her with the truth. He's very interested in the family history, wants to know everything. Declan. She spat the name with unexpected force. That name. Amelia told me. She told me years ago when she still remembered things clearly. Pearl, she said. If a man named Declan ever asks about the jewelry you run and hide your loved ones. I gasped. Leah and Mike looked at me alert. Grandma said that? Why? Because men like that Declan now are like the men from before. Gold diggers. Plunderers. Her voice broke a little. Our family, your great-grandfather and my brother Frederick, they did things during the war. Ugly things to survive and good things too in their own way. They helped some people save something. But Frederick was ambitious. He kept things. Not everything that passed through his hands reached its destination. Your great-grandfather found out too late. By the time the war ended, Frederick had disappeared. And he left behind a package. A package a family had entrusted to him, the Rosenbaums, just before they were arrested. He said it was the seed to rebuild. And the jewelry, I insisted, holding my breath. The jewelry was ours truly. But Amelia, my sister, she was smart. Smarter than Frederick. She suspected him. When our father on his deathbed gave the case to Amelia, he told her, "Guard this. It's the only clean thing we have left, and inside it holds the truth." She never quite understood what he meant. Until years later, she found a tiny rolled-up piece of paper inside the setting of the largest ruby in the necklace. Some letters and numbers like a code. She showed it to me scared. She said, "This isn't ours. This belongs to those who left. And if someone comes looking, it will be for this, not for the stones." Mike made a silent, triumphant gesture, writing furiously in a notebook. "And what did she do with the paper?" I asked, dreading the answer. "She put it back inside the same setting. She said, if someone comes looking with good intentions, they'll know how to find it. If not, let it rot with me." Pearl paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was a whisper full of urgency. "Cassie, listen to me. Your grandmother feared that one day the Rosenbaum's heirs would come looking for what was theirs, or the heirs of Frederick's ambition would come looking for a prize. This Declan, he's a lawyer, works with ships and trucks. Yes, I confirmed." "Then he's one of the second kind," she said with bitter certainty. "Frederick's partner, the one he disappeared with, was rumored to have set up a smuggling ring after the war. A man named Hale. Anthony Hale. A man with no scruples. Declan must be from that line. They've been searching for what Frederick hid for generations, and they think your family has the key." It all clicked into place with a deafening crash. "Aunt Pearl, the code. Do you remember it?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "At my age, child, I barely remember what I had for breakfast. But it was something like CHS NARA 1942 C12. And then some more letters. JR. Yes, I remember that, because Amelia said, it's the initials. Jacob Rosenbaum. Mike was already typing. CHS is the airport code for Charleston. NARA. National Archives and Records Administration. But there isn't a NARA facility in Charleston, I said, a flash of understanding illuminating me. But the city archives? They hold NARA overflow from that period. It has to be there. CHS NARA 1942 could refer to a box, a file, something deposited there in 1942. Mike finished, his eyes shining. C12 would be the box or shelf number, and JR the associated name. But that was almost 80 years ago, Leah objected. Those archives have been moved, reorganized. It's a lead, I said, clinging to it like a lifeline. The only one we have. Pearl coughed on the other end of the line. Cassie, does your mother know about this call? No, Auntie. She's in trouble because of all this. Poor Catherine, the old woman murmured. Always so proper. Listen, child, if you have the jewelry, get it out of that city. Get it away from that Declan. And don't trust anyone with that last name. Do you hear me? No one. The nurse's voice came on in the background, saying it was time for medication. Thank you, Aunt Pearl. Thank you so much. Take care, child. And may God have mercy on us all. I hung up. The room was silent, heavy with the weight of the history that had just been unearthed. It wasn't just a plot of drugs and blackmail. It was a poisoned treasure hunt inherited from a war that had dragged my family into its vortex. We have to go to Charleston, Mike said, closing his laptop with a sharp click. It's the only way to see if that code means anything. And we have to do it fast. If Declan has the same clues, and it seems he does, he won't be long in reaching the same conclusion. And my father, I asked. He said he was going to contact Agent Miller. Leah bit her lip. It's a huge risk. But if that agent is legit and your father gives him what he has, it could set a real police operation in motion. We need to coordinate. Your father can't know we're going to the archives for his own safety. The less he knows, the better if they pressure him. And how do we get there? I asked. Declan must have people at airports and train stations. By car, Leah said. But not mine. Raoul can get us a clean one, no connection to anyone. We can leave this afternoon when there's more traffic from people returning from Christmas dinners. Will be harder to follow. The plan was forming, risky and rushed, but it was all we had. My secure phone vibrated again. A message from my father's number, but the phrasing didn't sound like him. Cassie, your father had a small accident. Slipped on the stairs while going down to get some firewood. Nothing serious, but he's at the hospital for observation. Your mother is with him. It would be good if you came. The family should be together at times like these. D. The threat was transparent. The accident was the warning and the invitation was a trap. I picked up the phone and dialed my mother's number. It rang and rang. Finally, Sophie answered, her voice choked with sobs. Cassie, Sophie, what happened? Is Dad okay? He fell. On the landing of the back stairs. He says he felt dizzy, but… There was an oil slick, Cassie. Oil on our stairs. He didn't see it. He hit his head. He has a concussion. He's at MUSC. Mom's a wreck. And Declan. Declan is here playing the concerned suitor. It's disgusting. Are you safe? I don't know, she whispered. Everything is so scary. Where are you? Please be careful. I love you guys too, I said, and hung up, feeling helpless and furious. Declan was playing dirty, and he was raising the stakes. Leah read the determination on my face. You can't go to the hospital. It's what he wants. I know, I said, and my voice sounded strangely cold. But this isn't just about the jewelry or the dirty money anymore. This is for my family. For my father who's in a hospital bed because of me. For my mother and sister trapped with that man. I stood up, gripping the cloth bag tightly. We're going to Charleston. We're going to find whatever is in that archive. And we're going to use it to bury Declan Hale and his entire line. It was rage, speaking a cold, pure rage born from fear. Mike and Leah exchanged a look, then nodded in unison. The game had escalated. We were no longer just fleeing pawns. We were, however, small and scared the only ones who could move toward the king. And the next move was Charleston. The car, an anonymous metallic gray sedan procured by Raoul, snaked its way down I-95 South. The flat, winter-brown landscape of the Carolinas unfolded monotonously around us. I was in the back seat, the cloth bag, with the jewelry pressed against my chest like a cursed talisman. Mike drove with a fierce concentration, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. Leah beside him manipulated two phones monitoring police frequencies and sending encrypted messages to a contact inside the FBI's Economic Crimes Unit, a trusted colleague named Victor, whom she had managed to bring into the loop. The silence was thick, broken only by the hum of the engine and the whisper of the heat. Every mile that took us further from the immediate threat was both a relief and a condemnation. Relief from the physical distance from Declan, condemnation for the feeling of fleeing, leaving my family in the lion's den. Your dad's stable, Leah said without looking up from the screen. Still under observation at MUSC. Your mom and Sophie are with him. Declan left an hour ago, according to my contact at the hospital. Said he had urgent business to attend to. She paused. He's posted a man at the door to the room. Says it's for security, given the robbery attempt. The doctors didn't protest. A jailer, I snorted, pressing my forehead against the cold window glass. He's got them watched. Yes, but as long as they're in a public hospital, it's harder for him to act directly. It's their shield for now. Mike adjusted the rearview mirror to look at me. You need to tell us everything, Cassie. Every detail from the last 2 years with Declan. Things that seemed weird at the time but you brushed off. Any questions about your family, about history, about the jewelry? Any trip, any contact of his that struck you as odd? I took a deep breath. Diving into those memories was like opening a wound and digging into it, but it was necessary. We met at a charity gala at the historic City Hall in Charleston for a Children's Hospital Foundation. I was covering the event for the magazine. He was one of the main sponsors. I closed my eyes, reliving the scene. He was perfect. He knew exactly what to say. He was interested in my work, in my family, not in a nosy way, but an attentive one. He made me feel special, like I was the only person in the room. Love bombing, Leah murmured with a professional edge. He saturates you with attention and affection at first to win your trust and isolate you. It worked, I admitted bitterly. My friends said he was too good to be true. Sophie never trusted him. Said his smiles didn't reach his eyes. And when did he start asking about your family? Mike probed. Slowly. At first it was general things, then more specific. He got obsessed with my maternal grandmother, with her history. She must have been a fascinating woman, he'd say. It's a shame there aren't more portraits, more documents from that era. He even took me to the cemetery where she's buried in Georgia once. I thought it was romantic. Macabre, but romantic. Information gathering, Mike said, making mental notes. And the jewelry. I wore them to a formal dinner. A few months after we started dating. The ruby necklace. His eyes lit up, not with admiration, but with greed. He hid it quickly, but I noticed. He said, "They're exquisite from another time. You should have them appraised, insured." Then he started bringing up a friend of his in conversation, a supposed expert in historical jewelry from Geneva. He insisted several times that the expert should see them. Leah turned her head. "And you gave him the jewelry?" "No, of course not. They were my grandmother's. I told him it wasn't necessary that they were kept safely." He got angry. It was the first time I saw his temper. It was brief, a flash of rage, but it was real. Then, he apologized. Said he only wanted what was best for me and my inheritance. Control, Leah stated. He wanted access to them, to be able to lose them or replace them with copies if needed. The car passed a sign for Savannah. Mike slowed slightly, blending in with the sparse traffic. And the job offer in Atlanta, I asked aloud, struck by a memory. It was a year ago. Vogue Atlanta made me an offer for a staff position. It was my dream. I told him, ecstatic. "And what happened?" Mike asked. At first he seemed supportive. Then the worries started. That the distance would be hard, that Atlanta was an expensive city, that he couldn't move his business so easily. Then he introduced me to a contact of his, the editor of a much smaller fashion magazine in Charleston. They offered me a position there. He said it was a more stable opportunity close to family. I turned it down. We fought. It was the biggest fight we'd ever had. He said I was selfish, that I wasn't thinking about our future. In the end, I didn't take the Atlanta job. The offer expired, and he became more attentive, more loving than ever. He proposed 3 months later. Isolation and financial control, Leah said, her voice laced with frustration. Classic. He clipped your wings and then gave you a golden cage as a consolation prize. The pain of recognizing the manipulation was physical, a punch to the gut. I had been so naive, so blind. After the engagement, I continued forcing myself to remember. The questions got more intense. He wanted to know the details of my grandparents' wills, the insurance on the family home. He even suggested that once we were married, we merge our assets to simplify things. My father was strangely cool to the idea. Now I understand why. My secure phone vibrated. It was Sophie. I called her immediately. "Sophie, how's Dad? He's asleep." "Sedatives. Mom's a mess, but she's putting on a brave face." Her voice was a tense whisper. "Cassie, I have to tell you something. Something I never dared to say." "Tell me." She took a deep breath. "It was a few months ago. You were in New York for work. Declan came to the house supposedly to bring some documents for Dad. Dad wasn't there. Mom was out. I was alone studying in the living room. A cold premonition washed over me." "What happened, Sophie?" He sat down. Too close. "Started asking questions about you, but in a weird way. Do you think she's happy with me? Does she talk about me when I'm not around?" Then he put his hand on my knee. He said I was very mature for my age, very smart, that men like him liked women with character. Her voice trembled with disgust. I pushed his hand off and told him to leave. He laughed, Cassie. He said, "No need to be so dramatic. It was just a compliment. But if you ever need anything, money, a favor, you know where I am. Your sister doesn't have to know everything." Nausea rose in my throat. "Oh my God, Sophie. I didn't tell you because I didn't know how. You were so in love. And I thought, maybe I misinterpreted it, or maybe it was my fault for being too, I don't know. But now, seeing what he is, I know what it was. It was a test to see if he could manipulate me too, to have something else to blackmail the family with." "It wasn't your fault," I said with a firmness I didn't feel. "None of this is your fault. He's a predator." "I know," she said, and I noticed a new tone of determination in her voice. "That's why I'm calling." Last night, after Dad's accident, Declan stayed for a while. He was talking on the phone in the garden. He thought no one could hear him, but I was in the kitchen with the window cracked open. I sat up straight in the seat. What did he say? He was talking to someone, didn't say a name. He said, "The old doctor has disappeared. Got spooked more than he should have after last night's scare. We need to find him before he decides to do something stupid." And then he said, she paused, her voice dropping even lower. He said, "The girl has to have the jewelry. And if she doesn't have it, she knows where it is. Find her. Use whatever it takes. But the deadline is running out. Our partners in the East are not patient. Partners in the East. The network extended beyond the US. And Dr. Chavez had disappeared. He had tried to do something stupid, probably go to the police, and they had caught him. Sophie, you have to be so careful, I said, panic tightening my chest. Don't confront him. Don't give him any reason. Don't worry about me, she said with a bravery that sounded fragile. You take care of yourself, Cassie. Find whatever it is they're looking for and use it to crush him. For all of us. She hung up. I told Mike and Leah about Ian. Mike swore, hitting the steering wheel with the palm of his hand. If they have him, he's dead. If he escaped, he's in the same boat as us. We have to assume they have him, Leah said with professional coldness. And what? Sooner or later he'll talk. Or your father under pressure will break and tell Declan you know something about the archive. We have to move faster. A heavy silence filled the car. The highway seemed endless. Rage and fear boiled inside me, a toxic mix. It was no longer just betrayal. It was a dirty war, and my family were hostages. It was then I made a decision. I took out the secure phone, not the one I used to talk to my family or Leah, but the other one, the one Declan had used to threaten me, which I had kept turned off in a separate pocket. What are you doing? Leah asked, alarmed. I'm done hiding, I said, and my voice sounded strangely serene. He thinks he has me cornered, scared. It's time he knew he doesn't. I turned on the phone, ignoring Leah's protests. I dialed the number from which I had received the threats. It rang twice before he answered. Cassie. Declan's voice was soft, almost tender, a repulsive disguise. What a pleasure to hear your voice. Your father is doing better, by the way. He'll recover. Cut the crap, Declan, I said, and the coldness of my own voice surprised me. I know about Dr. Chavez. I know you have him. Or what's left of him. There was a brief, loaded silence. When he spoke again, the kind mask had slipped. His tone was flat professional. You're smarter than you look. Although running away like a frightened rat doesn't show much intelligence. I wasn't running. I was changing my strategy. Oh, really? And what strategy is that? Beautiful? Hiding with your cop friend and that washed-up journalist. His contempt was palpable. You won't last long. And while you do, your family will suffer the consequences of your disobedience. If you touch a single hair on my family's head, Declan, what I have will be sent to Interpol, the press, and your partners in the East in a mass email. I invented the threat on the fly, hoping it sounded convincing. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. And what is it you have exactly? Some old jewelry. A few rumors about my business. You have nothing, Cassie. You only have fear. I have a code, Declan, I blurted, gambling everything on one card. GHS Nara, 1942. C12 does Joel H. Does that ring a bell? The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could almost hear his heart quicken, hear him recalculating all his assumptions. When he spoke, his voice was a steel wire, sharp and dangerous. Where did you get that? My grandmother was smarter than your thieving grandfather, I spat. What Frederick Vaughan hid wasn't lost. It was just waiting for the right person. You are not the right person, he said, and every word was a stab of ice. You are an obstacle. A spoiled little girl who thinks she's smarter than she is. Give me back what's mine, the jewelry and the code. And maybe, just maybe, your father won't spend the rest of his life in prison for fraud and racketeering. Not to mention what could happen to good old Ian if he's still breathing. I don't negotiate with terrorists, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. And you, Declan, you're not a tycoon. You're a low-life thug playing gangster. Your empire is built on lies and threats, and it's going to come crashing down. And I'm going to be there to watch. I will find you, Cassie, he whispered, and the malevolence in his tone made the hair on my neck stand up. And when I do, you will regret every word you've said today. You will beg me to forgive you, and I will enjoy saying no. I never loved you, I blurted, letting out all the contempt that had been building for months, years. Now I just despise you. I hung up before he could respond. I turned off the phone and threw it on the floor of the car as if it had burned me. I was panting, my hands shaking. Mike and Leah were staring at me, impressed and worried. Cassie's. Mike exhaled. You just lit a fire under him. It was necessary, I said, leaning back in the seat exhausted. Now he knows that we know. That we're not just scared victims. That we have something he wants. That makes us a threat, but it also buys us a little time. He won't kill us until he has the code and the jewelry. And now he knows we're not going to hand them over easily. That was brave, Leah said with a shadow of admiration in her voice. And stupid. but mostly brave. You've changed the game. He's no longer hunting a frightened prey. He's chasing someone who has declared war on him. Yes, I said, looking out the window at the landscape that was starting to get more hilly as we approached the coast. And the war has just begun. The rest of the trip passed in a tense silence. Mike drove like a man possessed, pushing the speed limit whenever it was safe. Leah was immersed in her screens, getting updates. Bad news, she announced, suddenly her face grim. I talked to Victor, my contact at the FBI. Agent Miller, the one who gave your dad the card, was reassigned overnight to a cyber piracy case in Buffalo, New York. An excuse to get him out of the way, I muttered. Exactly. And there's more. The investigation into Hale and Associates was officially closed this morning. Lack of evidence. All neat and tidy. So we can't trust the feds, Mike summed up. Not officially, not entirely, Leah said. Victor is reliable, but he's alone, and he's scared. He says the order to close the case came from very high up, which means someone with political or judicial power is protecting the Hales. It was like swimming against an increasingly strong current. Every door was closing, every exit blocked. All we have left is the archive, I said, stroking the cloth bag. There has to be something there. Or there was something, Mike corrected somber. It's been almost a century, Cassie. Papers get lost, destroyed, stolen. We have to try, I insisted, with more faith than I felt. Leah looked at her watch. We'll be in Charleston in an hour. I've contacted a history professor at the university, a friend of a friend. He specializes in World War II and the archives of that era. His name is Samuel Cohen. I gave him a diluted version that we're looking for genealogical information on the Rosenbaums. He's agreed to help us discreetly. Cohen, a Jewish surname. Maybe it wasn't a coincidence. The entry into Charleston with its church steeples silhouetted against the cloudy afternoon sky should have been a relief, but I only felt a greater oppression. This city where I had met Declan, where I had believed in a happy future, was now just the stage for a desperate search into the past. We checked into a cheap, anonymous motel on the outskirts of the city, paying in cash. Samuel Cohen met us in his office at the College of Charleston's history department late in the afternoon when the halls were empty. He was an older man with white hair and lively eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. His office smelled of old books and strong coffee. Leah implied this was delicate, he said, observing us with curiosity. And it has to do with the Rosenbaums, a little-known but significant family. Bankers of Austrian origin established in New York since the late 19th century. They disappeared in 1942. Rumor is they were helped to escape, but that part of their fortune, the most liquid part in the form of bonds and documents, was lost along the way. Lost or stolen? Mike asked direct. Cohen shrugged. In that chaos, the difference was sometimes subtle. Frederick Vaughan had a reputation as an opportunist. He helped people in exchange for a cut. With the Rosenbaums, the cut must have been considerable. It was said he not only took his commission but also kept the most valuable package, a set of documents that gave access to accounts in Switzerland and shares in American companies. A paper treasure, as some called it. And the code, I asked, holding my breath. KS Nara, 1642. Say tu un bus. J.R. Dot. Cohen's eyes lit up. CHS Charleston. Nara National Archives. The Charleston City Archives building was used as a secure deposit for NARA-related materials during the war. He went to a shelf filled with binders. Many institutions evacuated their archives to what they believed were safer territories. The Charleston Archive received several lots. They were cataloged with origin and destination codes. He scanned some notes. Yes, here. NARA held assets deposited in Charleston. 1942 year of arrival. C12 would be box number 12 inches that lot. And JR? I asked, my heart pounding. Jacob Rosenbaum Cohen said without hesitation. The patriarch of the family. If there's anything, it would be in that box. The problem, he winced, is that those archives have been restored, reorganized, partially moved. Those wartime funds are now in the South Carolina Historical Society archives, and access is restricted. You need a special permit and a convincing academic reason. We don't have time for permits, Leah said. Cohen looked at the three of us, understanding the gravity in our faces. He sighed. I know the chief archivist. I owe him a favor. I can get you an express research visit for one of my PhD students. He looked at Mike and his two research assistants. First thing tomorrow morning. But it will be a 1-hour window maximum, and you'll have to know exactly what you're looking for. What would we be looking for? I asked. Any document with the seal or signature of Jacob Rosenbaum or Frederick Vaughn as an intermediary. Letters, wills, inventories. Especially if there's a key, a numerical reference, or a diagram. The Rosenbaums were bankers. Their secrets would be encrypted, but in the style of the era. Notes in the margins, numerical codes within innocuous texts. We left Cohen's office with a mix of hope and anxiety. We had a destination, a path, but it was narrow and full of obstacles. Back at the motel, my secure phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number, a link to an article from a local Georgia news site. The headline read, "Renowned local physician dies in traffic accident." The sub-headline, Dr. Ian Chavez lost control of his vehicle on a county road. There were no witnesses. The photo showed the car smashed against a tree, the same model Ian drove. The world collapsed on me. They caught him. He talked. And they silenced him. The message that accompanied the link was short from the same number Declan had called from hours before. A sad accident. The roads are very dangerous when it's cold. Be careful where you walk, Cassie. The next curve could be yours. D. The threat was no longer veiled. It was a promise. And they had just fulfilled the first part. Ian was dead, and we were next. The South Carolina Historical Society, housed in a magnificent old fireproof building in the heart of Charleston, was an oasis of sepulchral silence. The smell of old wood, aged paper, and a faint hint of dampness permeated the high steel shelves that were lost in the gloom of the vaulted ceiling. Samuel Cohen had gotten us the pass. Mike was the PhD student researching exile networks, and Leah and I were his assistants. We wore fake credentials and a nervousness that grew with every step. The chief archivist, a thin man with a weary expression named Mr. Leopold, had received us with skepticism, but without asking many questions, merely pointing to a secluded table in a side room. The NARA CHS 1942 lot is in deep storage. It's not digitized. I'll have to bring the physical boxes. They're heavy and fragile. His gaze scanned us. 1 hour. Not a minute more. And no flash photography. While we waited, we listened to every noise. Mr. Leopold's footsteps echoing in the stone silence, the slight creak of a door in some other room. Mike had his laptop open, displaying old maps of Charleston as a cover. Leah watched the entrance, her posture rigid, her eyes scrutinizing every shadow. If Declan knows about the code, Mike murmured, without looking up from the screen and assuming Cohen is right about the interpretation, it's possible he's also deduced the destination. He could have someone here. Cohen is trustworthy, Leah whispered, but his phone could be tapped. Or the archivist could be bought. In this world, everyone has a price. You're not helping, I grumbled, my fingers stroking the cloth bag inside my backpack. The physical presence of the jewelry was both a comfort and a curse. Mr. Leopold returned, pushing a metal cart with 4 large, dusty gray cardboard boxes. He deposited them with a dull thud on our table. Box 10, 11, 12, and 13. Box 14 was lost in a flood in the 60s. You're lucky these are still here. He walked away, leaving us alone with the dust of the past. Box 12. We looked at it as if it were an explosive device. Mike put on thin latex gloves and carefully lifted the lid. The smell of old paper and oblivion hit us even harder. Inside, an ordered chaos. Files tied with frayed cloth ribbons. Cardboard folders with labels written in fountain pen. A few brown envelopes, all covered in a fine layer of dust that dated back decades. Look for any mention of von Rosenbaum or any document with strange notary or bank seals, Mike instructed, divvying up the stacks. The minutes passed inexorably. We skimmed through mind-numbingly boring administrative documents. Inventories of evacuated liturgical objects, lists of books, transport permits. Nothing. Desperation began to climb up my throat. What if it was in the lost box? Or what if it was all a fantasy of my Aunt Pearl's? It was Leah who found it. Here, she said in a low but intense voice. Register of Special Deposits managed by F. Vaughn Intermediary. It was a leather-bound ledger with yellowed, brittle pages. Mike opened it with extreme care. Lists of names, dates, brief descriptions. And there, in an entry dated the 15th of November 1942, Deposit No. 47. Name J. Rosenbaum family. Contents. 1 sealed private document case. Intermediary F. Vaughn. Release only to bearer of the Crimson Key and knowledge of the family seal double-headed eagle. Transferred to permanent custody. Protocol CHSNAR A1942C12. The Crimson Key, I breathed instinctively, touching the spot under my clothes where the ruby necklace hung. And the family seal, Mike added, pointing to a small drawing in the margin. A rather crude two-headed eagle. But it doesn't say where the document case is. Just that it was deposited. We searched frantically through the box. Nothing else. Nothing to indicate a physical location, only the record that it had existed. It's a dead end, I said, feeling my strength leave me. We know it existed, but not where it is. Maybe Frederick Vaughn took it, or it got lost, or it's somewhere else. Or it's exactly where he left it, said a calm male voice from behind us. The three of us spun around startled. A man was leaning against the doorframe of the room, tall, well-built with messy brown hair and a leather jacket over jeans. He had an architect's portfolio under his arm and an expression of concerned recognition. "Sorry to scare you," he said, approaching. His voice was deep familiar in a way that shook me to my core. "I saw you from outside. You looked nervous. And I heard some of what you were saying. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but this room has a treacherous echo." "Who are you?" Leah asked instinctively, stepping between him and me, her hand near where she would carry her badge, though she wasn't wearing it. The man looked directly at me, ignoring her and Mike. His grayish-green eyes held mine. "Hello, Cassie." I couldn't breathe. I knew him. He had changed, more mature, with lines around his eyes I didn't remember, but I knew him. "Alex," I managed to say. "Alex Vance, my ex-boyfriend. The architect I had broken up with over 3 years ago, when Declan had swept into my life like a hurricane of promises and glamour. I had left him saying I needed something more, that he was too quiet. Now, standing before me, he seemed like the embodiment of a sanity I had scorned. "What are you doing here?" Mike asked, suspicious. "Work," Alex said calmly. "Historic building restoration. I'm assessing some cracks in the dome next door. Mr. Leopold is an old acquaintance. He mentioned there were some very intense researchers looking at the wartime funds, and when he described a dark-haired woman with wide eyes, I knew it was you." His gaze swept over my face, my tense posture. "You've changed. And not for the better, I'm afraid." "This isn't the best time for a reunion, Alex," I said, feeling vulnerable and exposed. "I can see that. And I heard von Rosenbaum in Crimson Key. Words that by a strange coincidence I've seen before." He placed his portfolio on the table and opened a side compartment. He took out an old photocopy of an architectural blueprint. "A year ago, I was working on the renovation of a historic house in the French Quarter. It had belonged to the Vaughn family. During a remodel behind a false wall, we found an old embedded safe. It was inaccessible without the combination or the key. The client, an anonymous investor, said it didn't matter to just seal it up. But I'm curious. I photographed everything, including the symbol engraved on the safe door." He pointed to an enlarged corner of the blueprint. There, worn but clear, was the same double-headed eagle from the ledger. "Where is this house?" Mike asked, forgetting his suspicion. 5 Chalmers Street, 200 yards from here. "And the client was Declan Hale." I interrupted, already knowing the answer. Alex nodded slowly. "Yes. I met him once. He came to supervise. Cold man. Asked a lot of questions about any findings, if we had opened anything. I said no, that we were only there to consolidate the structure. He didn't seem to quite believe me. He looked at me again. "Cassie, what the hell is going on? The rumors that you've run off that your family is in trouble? And now this." Snooping in archives with wartime names and Declan Hale involved up to his neck. I didn't know where to begin. The fatigue, the fear, the unexpected appearance of a past that now seemed like a lost refuge. It all overwhelmed me. Leah, seeing my distress, took over. "Mr. Vance, this is very serious. Cassie is in danger. Her family, too. Declan Hale is not who he says he is. He's a criminal, and whatever is in that safe might be the key to stopping him." Alex didn't seem surprised. He just pressed his lips together and looked at the ledger, then at the blueprint. "The Crimson Key. It's your grandmother's jewelry, the set you always wore on special occasions." I nodded. "And the seal is this eagle. The safe is in a house Declan bought, probably knowing it belonged to the Vaughns, hoping to find this." He thought for a moment, but he didn't open it. Or couldn't. He needs the physical key, and maybe something else, something only someone from the Vaughn family or someone they told would know. "My Aunt Pearl said my grandmother found a paper with the code inside the setting of the big ruby," I said. "But that just led us here to the register, not to the safe." Unless Mike mused, taking the necklace, which I had just pulled from the bag. He examined the main setting, holding the central ruby. She said it was rolled up inside. What if it wasn't just the code? What if the paper had something else on it? A detail your grandmother didn't mention, or your aunt didn't remember? Alex leaned in to look at the setting. Do you have a pin? A fine needle. Leah produced a small sewing kit from her purse. With surprisingly delicate hands for a police officer, Alex took a needle and, under the dim light of the table lamp, carefully inserted it into a tiny decorative hole on the side of the gold setting. He gently pried. With a nearly inaudible click, a side plate of the setting came loose. It wasn't just a mount, it was a tiny locket. And inside there wasn't just the small, yellowed roll of paper Pearl had described. Next to it, perfectly folded, was another thicker piece of paper with an ink drawing. We unfolded it, our hearts in our throats. The first paper had the code CHSNAR A1942C12JR. The second showed a diagram, a schematic of a safe, with a series of numbers and letters arranged in a circle around the eagle symbol. And a note: the key turns right until the eagle's heart points to the truth of Exile 1492. 1492, Mike read. The year of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. A symbolic date for a Jewish family like the Rosenbaums. It's not a numerical combination, Alex said, studying the diagram. It's an instruction. The key must be something physical that turns, and the eagle's heart must be a moving part of the symbol on the safe. You have to align it with a mark, probably the number 1492 engraved somewhere. I looked at the dismounted ruby in my hand. The crimson key wasn't metaphorical. It was literal. The stone itself, or its mount, must fit into the lock. We have to go to that house, I said, the decision crystallizing inside me. That's insane, Leah objected. It's Declan's property. He could have it watched. Or worse, he could be inside. Do you have a key? Mike asked Alex. I had a copy of the master set from the construction. I don't know if they've changed the locks. And the safe is in what was the old study on the ground floor, behind a false bookcase. The wall isn't sealed anymore. We rebuilt it but left a concealed door at Hale's express request. Then we can get in, I said. Alex looked at me intently. Cassie, this is dangerous. Very dangerous. My whole life is dangerous, I snapped. My father is in a hospital with a guard who isn't his. My mother and sister are trapped. A good man just died in an accident. And the man responsible thinks he can do whatever he wants. No, we have to open that safe. And we have to do it now. Before Declan decides we're too much trouble and arranges an accident for us too. There was a long silence. Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. You were always so damn stubborn, he said, but without resentment. Okay, I'll help you. But we go in with a plan. And if anything feels wrong, we're out. Understood. We nodded. We gathered everything, returned the boxes to Mr. Leopold with vague excuses, and left the archive under the old man's curious gaze. On the street, the late afternoon light filtered through the live oaks. The air smelled of salt and danger. Alex led us through a labyrinth of narrow cobblestone alleys to a massive wooden gate on Chalmers Street. The alarm, Leah whispered. It's a basic system, Alex said. I installed it temporarily during the work. The default code might still be active. If not, he pulled a small device from his portfolio. I know how to bypass it, but it will trigger a silent signal at the security company. We'd have about 20 minutes, maybe less, before someone comes to investigate. He was fast. The default code 1234 ironically worked. The gate creaked open. We entered a neglected courtyard with a dry fountain. The two-story house, its facade a pale stucco, had its windows shuttered. It looked deserted. Alex led us straight inside into a large empty room that must have been a parlor. On one wall, a fake bookshelf. He pressed a hidden button on the side, and a section of the shelf swung noiselessly inward, revealing a modern steel door set into the old stone. In the center, the engraved double-headed eagle with a circular slot in the center of its chest, and around it a rotating ring with numbers and letters. The safe. The slot, Alex said. It's the exact shape of the ruby's setting. Trembling, I took the central ruby from the necklace. Its backing, now seen in detail, had a strangely shaped metal protrusion, not just a simple clasp. I stepped forward. It fit into the eagle's slot with a satisfying click. Now, according to the diagram, Mike murmured, looking at the paper, turn right until the eagle's heart points to the truth of Exile 1492. Alex examined the rotating ring. There were numbers 0 to 9, and letters. In a barely visible position, there was a small engraved arrow next to the number 1. The heart must be this arrow, or maybe the ruby itself as it turns. We have to align the arrow with the digit 1, then 4, 9, and 2 on the outer ring. But in reverse order, maybe, or... There's no time for trial and error, Leah said, looking at her watch. We've been in here for 8 minutes. Let's try the obvious, I said. I took the ruby, which now served as a handle. Turn right until something aligns with 1, 4, 9, 2. I turned. The mechanism was smooth but firm. The ruby and with it an internal pointer that represented the heart moved over the ring of numbers. As the pointer passed over the number 1, there was a faint click. The same happened as it passed over 4, 9, and 2, always turning to the right. With the last click, a sound of bolts retracting echoed from within the steel door. It swung open. Inside, there were no piles of gold or stacks of bills, just a dry, cracked leather document case. I pulled it out with trembling hands and opened it on a stone table against the wall. Inside were several documents in German and French with Swiss notary seals, letters from Jacob Rosenbaum, and most importantly, a holographic will and a trust agreement. Mike, who spoke some German, examined them quickly, his eyes widening. My God, he exhaled. It's huge. Jacob Rosenbaum's will names Frederick Vaughn as the interim trustee of a series of assets, stocks numbered, bank accounts, properties. In the event of his disappearance, Vaughn was obligated to find and deliver them to the rightful heirs. If he couldn't find them, the assets would pass to a charitable foundation after 100 years. Vaughn never looked for them, Alex said. He kept the documents, probably waiting for memories to fade so his own heirs could claim them. And the contract, I asked. It's the trust agreement. It establishes that the only proof of legitimacy to make a claim besides these documents is the Crimson Key, a family jewel they gave Vaughn as a sign of trust and knowledge of the seal and the key date, 1492. Vaughn betrayed their trust. But the jewel ended up with my grandmother, I finished. He must have given it to his family, maybe to pay a debt or to hide it. And he hid the documents here in his own house, thinking that one day his heirs, the Hales, would find them, Alex said. But they didn't have the key. They needed the jewel. And you had it. It all made a terrible, perfect kind of sense. Declan didn't just want a treasure. He wanted to legitimize it. With these documents and the jewel, he could legally claim an incalculable fortune that had been dormant for nearly a century. Laundering drug money would be child's play with that kind of backing. We have to take this, Leah said, starting to gather the documents. It's the master proof. Not just of the treasure, but of the historical connection between the Hales and the original fraud. We can use it. A sharp knock on the main door of the house froze our blood. Then, a cold, clear voice filled with a contained rage that cut through the wood and stone. Cassie, I know you're in there. Open up. It's been a fun little trip, but the games are over. It was Declan. We had taken too long. Declan's voice pierced the heavy wooden door. Open it or I'll have it knocked down. Sharp electric panic paralyzed us for a second. Leah was the first to react. She drew her service weapon, which she'd carried concealed under her jacket, and gestured for us to get out of the direct line of fire. Raoul positioned, she spoke into her phone, which was on an open line. Mike snapped the leather case with the documents shut and pushed it toward me. Take it. Don't let go. Alex, pale but resolute, scanned the empty room. The back window. It leads to the service alley. Too late, said another rough voice, this one closer from the direction of the still-open false bookcase. A burly, bald man, the same one Raoul had described, watching Leah's street, appeared in the opening of the secret door. He held a small but deadly pistol. He was smiling. Behind him, the tall, elegant figure of Declan emerged. He wore an impeccable black leather jacket and an expression of glacial triumph. What a coincidence finding you all here, Declan said, striding into the room as if it were his own living room. His eyes swept the scene, the open, safe, the case in my hands, the ruby still in the lock. His smile widened. I see you've done my work for me, darling. How considerate. Stay back, Declan, I said, clutching the case to my chest. My voice didn't tremble, it only burned. I don't think you're in a position to give orders. His gaze shifted to Leah, whose pistol was now leveled at the bald man. And you, Officer Leah Ramirez, isn't it Charleston PD? Operating out of your jurisdiction with an illegally transported weapon, that's bad practice. Your career ends today. The weapon is registered, Leah lied, not taking her sights off the bald man. And I'm acting in self-defense and in aid of a threatened citizen. Your chauffeur has an expired carry permit, and by the scar on his neck, I'd bet my pension he's the guy we're looking for on assault and extortion charges in 3 counties. The bald man's smile faltered slightly. Declan waved a hand impatiently. Enough theatrics. Cassie, give me the case and the jewel. You've caused enough trouble. And then what I asked, taking a step back. You let us go. Like you let Dr. Chavez go. His face darkened. The doctor had an unfortunate accident. A weak heart and a slippery road. A tragic combination. You can avoid a similar tragedy for your family. My family is under police protection, I said, hoping it was true. You think, he asked with genuine amusement? The plainclothes officer at your father's hospital door has been on my payroll for years. Just like the judge, who closed the investigation into my business. Just like the archivist Leopold, who sent me a little text when a trio of researchers started asking about the wartime funds. He looked at Alex. And you, the architect. Sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. How romantic. Rescuing the damsel in distress. Pathetic. Alex said nothing, just stared at Declan with absolute contempt. Drop it, Hale said, a new voice firm and full of authority from the main entrance. We all turned. In the doorway of the parlor, flanked by two plainclothes officers in bulletproof vests and carrying tactical rifles, stood a man in his 50s, with a tired face and a wrinkled suit. Behind him, with an expression of contained fury, was my father Arthur, his arm in a sling and a bruise on his temple, but standing tall. Agent Miller, Declan said, unfazed. What an honor. Have you come to arrest these intruders? They've broken into my property. I've come to listen to a very interesting recorded conversation, the agent said, holding up a small device. Thanks to the brave cooperation of Miss Sophie Miller, who with a hidden cell phone has been transmitting everything that's happened in that hospital room, including the very illuminating conversations of your employee. The blood drained from Declan's face. For the first time, I saw a crack in his facade of control, a tick in his jaw. And also, the agent continued to collect the documents Miss Cassie Miller is holding. Documents that, according to an anonymous, encrypted, and verifiable call to my direct superior at the FBI, detail a historic fraud and massive misappropriation that appears to be at the root of the Hale family's current difficulties in laundering their less-than-legal activities. It had to be Mike. While we were in the archive, he must have sent an alert. Those accusations are ridiculous, Declan spat, but his voice had lost its iron certainty. Those documents are forgeries, and this is an illegal intrusion. The search warrant will be here in 5 minutes, Agent Miller said calmly, signed by a judge who thankfully is not on your payroll. In the meantime, I invite you and your associate to surrender your weapons. The charges of armed threats and virtual kidnapping of the Miller family are quite clear. The bald man looked at Declan, hesitating. The tables had turned. We weren't 3 scared civilians anymore. We were the center of an FBI operation. Kidnapping is a strong word, Agent Declan said, regaining some of his composure. A cold, calculating smile returned to his lips. I was merely concerned for my fiancé, who appears to have suffered a nervous breakdown and absconded with documents of my property. Documents of sentimental family value. Liar. My father shouted, stepping forward, his face flushed with rage. Those documents prove your family stole assets that don't belong to them, and they prove your blackmail, your extortion. The words of a ruined and desperate man himself accused of fraud, Declan retorted dismissively. His gaze returned to me. Cassie, this doesn't have to end badly. Give me the documents. Let's forget this misunderstanding. Your family can go on with their lives with a few debts, perhaps, but alive. And you can go to Atlanta wherever you want. Free. It was his final play. The poisoned offer. The promise of escape in exchange for silence. I looked at the case in my hands. Then I looked at my father, injured but upright. At Leah, her weapon steady. At Mike, whose cunning had brought us this far. At Alex, who had come back into my life just when I needed him most. And I looked at Declan, at his cold eyes that had never loved me, that had only seen me as a means to an end. A trophy. A key. No, I said, and the word echoed in the empty room with a force that surprised me. I'm not free if I let you in. I won't be free if my family lives with your sword over their heads. And I won't be free if I let you escape to do to others what you did to me. I walked toward Agent Miller, holding out the leather case. Agent, here is the inheritance of Jacob Rosenbaum, stolen by Frederick Vaughn, coveted by the Hale family, and the proof that Declan Hale tried to seize it through extortion, blackmail, and association with a criminal network that includes drug, trafficking, and money laundering. Declan made a sharp move as if to stop me, but the bald man held his arm. Boss, no. There are too many cops outside. Bitter, absolute defeat washed over Declan's face for an instant. It was only a second, but I saw it. The house of cards was collapsing. Then his gaze fixed on me, and in it there was no rage or fear, only a pure, deep, glacial hatred. This isn't over, Cassie, he said, and his voice was a whisper that everyone heard. It will never be over. Agent Miller gestured. The plainclothes officers moved forward to cuff him. It was then that two muffled shots rang out from the alley. Sniper Leah yelled, shoving me to the floor. Chaos erupted. The agents ducked for cover. The bald man used the confusion to push Declan toward the secret door. "This way, boss." "No," I screamed, watching as Declan, with one last hateful look at me, disappeared behind the false bookcase, followed by his thug. Leah and the agents ran after them as Agent Miller barked orders into his radio. There were more shots from outside than the screech of tires. I stayed on the stone floor, trembling. The case was now in the hands of the law. The ruby lay on the floor next to the open safe. My father knelt beside me, wrapping his good arm around me. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry for all of it." "It's not over, Dad," I whispered, looking at the door where Declan had fled. He said it. "This isn't over." And I knew with a chilling certainty that he was right. We had won a battle. But the war against the shadow of Declan Hale, and everything he represented, had only just begun. The silence that followed Declan's escape was more terrifying than the gunshots. An agent lay wounded in the courtyard, a shot in his shoulder. Another was chasing the bald man down the alley. Declan had vanished like smoke. Agent Miller helped my father up. "Mr. Miller, I'll need your full statement. And these documents, are they enough?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "They're a start," Miller admitted, bagging the case with gloved hands. "But without Declan, it's like having the map but not the treasure. His network is intact. He's the brain," Leah returned, panting. "They got away in an unmarked black van. Raoul is following, but in this labyrinth of streets. We have to get out of here," Mike said, grabbing his laptop. "This place isn't safe anymore." Alex helped me to my feet, his hands firm and steady. "My car is nearby. I can take you wherever you need to go." As we left the house under the escort of the remaining agents, my secure phone vibrated. It was Sophie. "Cassie, are you okay?" I heard them. The gunshots. "We're okay, Sophie. Thanks to you. You were so brave." "The cop, the one working for Declan, he's gone. He ran when Agent Miller showed up with Dad. Mom's okay. We're safe for now." Her voice trembled with adrenaline. "Stay with Agent Miller." "Trust him," I said and hung up. The world seemed to have changed in minutes. We were no longer fugitives. We were protected witnesses. But the main predator was still free. Alex's car was an older, discreet Volkswagen Golf. We piled in. "Where to?" he asked, starting the engine. "The main precinct," Leah said. "It's the safest place." I looked out the window as the narrow streets of the historic district flew by. Declan will expect that. He'll have the stations watched. He has eyes everywhere, as we've seen. "She's right," Mike said from the back seat, typing on his laptop tethered to his phone. "Besides, I need time to analyze these documents properly. There are details here, bank accounts and Liechtenstein reference numbers. If we can trace the money, we can freeze his assets, choke him financially." "What if we go to my Aunt Pearl's?" I suggested. "It's a small town in Georgia. No one would look for us there." "Too predictable," Leah said. "And it could put her in danger." It was Alex who offered the solution. "I have a place. A cabin in the mountains near Asheville. It belongs to an architect friend who's working overseas. It's empty, isolated, doesn't even have a landline. You can only get there on a dirt road." We looked at each other. It was risky, but it was better than nothing. As Alex drove up the highway towards North Carolina, Mike worked. Suddenly he swore. "I've got it," he said, his voice charged with excitement. "One of the documents isn't a will. It's a coded letter from Jacob Rosenbaum to his son. He thought it would be intercepted, so he used a simple cipher. I've managed to decrypt part of it." "What does it say?" I asked, turning around. "It gives instructions to access a safe deposit box. Not in a bank, but at a logistics and storage company at the Port of New York. A company called Marisme Warehousing. That's one of Hale & Associates' subsidiaries," Leah breathed. The circle was closing. The treasure wasn't just paper. It was something physical stored in the enemy's own lair. "Declan must know," I said. "That's why he wanted the documents so desperately. Not just to legitimize the claim, but to retrieve what he already had hidden." "And what's in the box?" Alex asked. "The letter doesn't specify," Mike said. "It just says, the key to our future. And it gives a combination." A terrible, clear idea began to form in my mind. "We have to go to New York." "That's insane," Leah exclaimed. "It's his home turf. That's where he's strongest." "Exactly," I said, conviction growing inside me. That's why he won't expect it. He thinks we're in hiding, scared, and he has to go for that box. If the FBI raids his warehouses without the combination, he could make it disappear or move it. He needs the documents and the combination. We have both. It's the perfect bait. It's a suicide trap, Alex said harshly. Not if the trap is for him, I countered. Agent Miller. Can we contact him and a clean team? People we can trust. The risk is greater if we do nothing. As long as Declan is free, my family will never be safe. I'll never be safe. It has to end there. Where it all started for his family. After a heated discussion, the plan was set. It was madness, but it was all we had. 2 days later, Port of New York. Warehouse 47, Maresma Warehousing. The night was cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of salt and diesel. The warehouse, a massive, anonymous industrial building, rose like a sleeping giant among stacked shipping containers. The lighting was sparse. Leah, Mike, Alex, and I were hidden in a surveillance van parked 200 yards away alongside Agent Miller and 3 agents from his trusted team. We wore bulletproof vests under our clothes. I could feel the weight of the metal against my chest, a constant reminder of the danger. He's inside, Miller whispered into his earpiece. We saw him enter 20 minutes ago with 2 men. The safe is in the manager's office on the 2nd floor. The plan was simple and dangerous. I would go in with a hidden camera and transmitter. I would show them the forged documents and give them the combination. When they opened the box, Miller's team would storm the place. The evidence Declan caught red-handed, retrieving a treasure that wasn't legally his, using documents obtained through extortion, would be overwhelming. Ready? Leah asked, squeezing my hand. No, I said honestly. But I'm doing it. I walked toward the side door Miller had indicated was slightly ajar. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it could be heard across the entire yard. I carried a backpack with the forged documents and the ruby from the necklace. The inside of the warehouse was a cavern of shadows and aisles between metal shelves packed with palletized goods. It smelled of dust and oil. I followed instructions, climbing a metal staircase to a glass-walled office that jutted out like a nest over the main floor. The door was open. Inside, under the cold light of a fluorescent tube, was Declan. He was wearing a suit as if for a board meeting. Beside him, the bald man and another younger man who looked like a thug stood guard by an old safe set into the wall. It wasn't the modern one from the Charleston house. This one was old rusted steel with a mechanical dial lock. Punctual as always, Cassie Declan said without smiling. His eyes raked over me, evaluative cold, though a little underdressed for the occasion. I came for what you promised, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I took the documents from my backpack. The papers and the combination in exchange for you leaving my family alone forever and signing a document admitting you release my father from all the false debts. Declan took the papers, glancing at them with disdain. Acceptable forgeries. And the combination, my father's release first. He gestured impatiently. The bald man produced a piece of paper and a pen. Declan scribbled a signature. My lawyer will have the debt forgiveness document filed tomorrow morning provided this is what you say it is. He threw the paper at my feet. I picked it up. It was a hope, maybe another lie, but it was part of the charade. The combination is the 14th of September, 1492, I said, reciting what Mike had decrypted. Declan nodded to the younger man, who began to turn the dial. The sound of the clicks echoed in the office's silence. You know, Declan said, taking a step closer, we could have been great. You and I. With this, he gestured to the safe, which was opening with a metallic clang. We would have been invincible. Kings. I don't want to be queen of an empire of lies and blood, I said. He smiled, a humorless smirk. All empires are built on blood, darling. The difference is who cleans it up afterwards. The younger man pulled open the heavy safe door. Inside, there was no gold or jewels, just plastic-sleeved documents, a few old ledgers, and a small wooden box. Declan picked it up reverently and opened it. Inside, on blue velvet, gleamed a gold medal with the Rosenbaum's double-headed eagle, and beneath it, an antique key. The medallion from the family bank's board of directors, he murmured more to himself than to me. And the master key to the safe deposit boxes at the bank in Zurich. Inactive since 1939, but with the right codes and this key. His smile was real this time, triumphant. The frozen funds are reactivated, cleaned, made real. It was the final link, the physical proof that connected the documents to the real fortune. Now, he said, closing the box, I'll keep my part of the deal. I'll let you go. His gaze turned icy. Though I know you didn't come alone. The feds are outside, aren't they? I froze. He knew. You're predictable, Cassie, he continued calmly. Honorable to the end. That's why I'll win. He looked at the bald man. Prep exit B, and send a message to our friends outside. Tell them to start the show. At that moment, from down on the warehouse floor came the sound of a scuffle followed by a muffled cry and then a soft pop. Miller, I cried out, unable to stop myself. Declan laughed. Your agent has a price like everyone. A very high price, but a price nonetheless. The office door burst open, but it wasn't Miller. It was Alex, shoving an armed man before him, the man's wrist twisted behind his back. Leah was behind him, her gun in her hand. The show's canceled, Hale, Leah said, aiming at the bald man. Your man outside is in cuffs and Agent Miller's clean backup is surrounding the building. Your people are being arrested. Declan didn't seem flustered. In one swift movement, he grabbed my arm, pulled me against his body, drew a small pistol from the small of his back, and pressed the barrel to my temple. The metal was cold. A stalemate, he said, his voice in my ear. But I have what I came for, and I have your princess. So clear a path or the decor in this office is about to get very red. Alex went pale. Leah hesitated, her aim shifting between Declan and the bald man. Let her go, Declan said, a new voice from the door. My father, Arthur, stood there leaning on the frame. Leah must have brought him despite everything. He was pale, sweating, but his gaze was firm. Ah, the fallen lawyer, Declan said with contempt. Come to watch your favorite daughter die. I've come to give you this, my father said, and in his hand he held a small digital audio recorder. It's Dr. Chavez's full confession, recorded 2 days before his accident. It details everything. The drug shipments, the blackmail, your name, your father's name, the judges and cops on your payroll. I've sent it via encrypted email to 3 major newspapers, to Interpol, and to the Department of Justice, with instructions to publish if I don't turn up alive in the next 12 hours. For the first time, I saw Declan's control completely shatter. A flash of genuine panic crossed his eyes. That's a fake recording. You think so? My father asked with a deadly calm. Ian knew he was going to die. He wanted to leave a testament, and he did. Your empire of lies is over, Declan. Let her go. The tension in Declan's arm increased. I felt the barrel tremble against my skin. I looked at Alex, his eyes full of terror and determination. I looked at Leah, her finger on the trigger. I looked at my father, standing like an ancient judge. If you kill me, I whispered for his ears only, that recording gets published anyway. And your name will be mud forever. You won't be a fugitive tycoon. You'll be a common murderer. The very trash your family always tried to escape. It was the final blow. His pride, his obsession with legitimacy, with being more than a thug, broke. A groan of pure rage escaped his lips. In that instant of distraction, Alex moved not toward Declan but toward the younger man by the safe. He snatched the gun from the man's waistband and threw it against a metal shelf with a loud crash. The noise made Declan flinch, his eyes darting away for a fraction of a second. It was all the time Leah needed. The shot was sharp and precise. Not to the head, to the arm holding me. Declan screamed in pain and surprise. His grip loosened. I dropped to the floor, rolling away from him. The pistol fell from his wounded hand. It all happened fast after that. The bald man tried to raise his weapon, but a second shot from Leah to his leg brought him down. Miller's agents stormed the office, subduing the men. Declan, writhing on the floor, clutching his bleeding arm, looked at me. There was no hatred in his eyes now, just an infinite emptiness. The disbelief of a man who had lost absolutely everything. I'll destroy you, he spat, but the words had no force. They were the echo of an empty threat. No, Agent Miller said, cuffing him. You're going to spend a long, long time in a place where you can't destroy anyone. And your partners in the East, when they learn you've fallen and the feds have all their names on that recording, they'll probably make sure that time is limited. I stood up, trembling. Alex rushed to me, wrapping me in his arms. Are you okay? Are you okay? He murmured over and over, more to calm himself than me. My father approached, placing his good hand on my shoulder. He said nothing. He didn't have to. I looked at Declan being hauled up by 2 agents, the gold medallion and master key confiscated, his empire of smoke vanishing before his eyes. I didn't feel triumph, just a profound exhaustion and an even more profound relief. The war at last was over. Epilogue. 3 months later, the spring sun warmed the patio of a small cafe near Charleston's waterfront park. I was no longer wearing the ruby. I had donated it along with the rest of the jewelry to a foundation that searched for the descendants of families dispossessed during the war, including the Rosenbaums. It was the right thing to do. The Declan Hale case had exploded in the media. Ian's recording, combined with the documents from the warehouse and our testimony, had uncovered a web of corruption that reached into high places. Several judges and police officials were under investigation. Hale and Associates was bankrupt and under federal receivership. My father, in exchange for his testimony and the evidence he provided, had reached a deal with the prosecutor, a year of probation and a 5-year suspension of his law license. It was a small price to pay. He was at home trying to rebuild his life and his marriage with my mother. Sophie was back at college a little harder, a lot wiser. Mike had written the exclusive of the century, catapulting his career. Leah had received a commendation and a promotion, though she said the most valuable reward was sleeping through the night. And I was sitting on a patio looking at the blooming crepe myrtles, a coffee growing cold in front of me. I had left the fashion magazine. I couldn't go back to that world of appearances. I was working with Mike on a new digital publication specializing in investigative journalism. We called it Veritas. "What are you thinking about?" Alex sat down across from me, placing 2 fresh croissants on the table. He had moved back to Charleston for his restoration projects. And slowly, without rush but without pause, he had moved back into my life. "That spring smells different this year," I said, smiling. "It smells like freedom," he said, taking my hand. Not everything was perfect. Sometimes I still woke up with a start, thinking I heard Declan's voice. Sometimes my father would stare into space heavy with guilt. The emotional and physical scars were still there. But we were alive, and we were together. And the fear, that icy fear, that had paralyzed me on Christmas Eve, had transformed into something else, a cool, clear determination. I was no longer the naive girl who had fallen for a mirage. I was someone who had looked into the abyss and managed not to fall. Declan was awaiting trial. His threats from prison were sporadic, filtered through ambitious lawyers. They didn't scare me anymore. He was the past. I took a sip of the still warm coffee. Alex was smiling at me, telling me about a problem with the foundation of a 17th century house. It was real. It was simple. It was life. I looked out at the harbor, the bridge arching against the blue sky. Christmas Eve had been shattered, breaking the illusion of my life into 1,000 pieces. But from those pieces, I was building something new. Something solid. Something true. And for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't afraid of the future.